For no particular reason, I'm going to start with the rewind. I'll get these components together. You have 3 screws to hold that down to the top of the camera, and 1 screw that held the inner and outer rewind shaft together. Excuse me. So a wipe of synthetic grease on the inner. I should be able to feed that down from the top. Wriggled that in, that went in smoothly. Push that down, I've got to line up the slot with the hole. Then put their little screw in there that holds that. It's a dog point screw, I think you'd call that. So that should be good, and we just put the rewind knob on the top of that and check that it moves in and out smoothly. It does, so that's good. Here is the guide bush for our rewind. So I'll lubricate inside that with some synthetic grease. You could use just about any grease to do this job. Principal advantage of this synthetic grease in this application is it's nice and clean. Graphite grease would be all over my fingers in no time flat, staining them. Right, that goes on there, and that, when the video camera catches up, that's better, can go on the top of the camera. There are 3 screws. Here we go. So the film take-up spool can go in place. So I'll put a bit of synthetic grease around the centre here and on the leaves of those 2 springs. And fit that spool in place. So the round hole on the spool goes at the bottom and the slotted hole goes at the top, because that's where it couples to the advance shaft. And close the back of that. Here's the film advance shaft in the top, the upper bush. I'll put some synthetic grease on here. These parts all look pretty unworn. The nickel plating hasn't been rubbed through at all. So that suggests to me that the camera has done very little. Let's get this in place and get the 3 screws in there and tighten them up. On cameras that were somewhat worn out and tired, I might choose to use graphite grease in that position, because the surfaces would likely be somewhat rough if they had a lot of sand and rubbish driven into them over time. There's the 3rd screw is here. But these surfaces are just like new parts. There's no obvious wear at all. There's our little ratchet wheels. Apply some synthetic grease to the centre of that. And I'm very good at getting these parts mixed up, but let's find out. Pretty sure that's what goes there. That looks good. Tighten that up. Right, what do I want to put on next? Well, we can put on these parts. Right, so plain washer with the small hole, that lever, the large washer with the large hole, this lever, this lever, and if we can get all of those pieces all lined up at the same time, we'll be in business. That should be us. Tighten that up, make sure everything moves freely. It does. Where are the springs? 2 springs. This one goes here. Open that door to make this a little bit more stable, that's better. The other spring goes up here. Hang on, how if I put it around the right way. Better. That spring needs to hook around the back of this lever, pass it through underneath, so this is sprung loaded. Tighten that screw up, make sure that screw's done up tight. The shutter release. I'll lubricate the holes in the casting there with a bit of molybdenum paste. I'll run some molybdenum paste up inside the shaft here. And it looked to me like a droplet of water came out there, so that wasn't as dry as it should have been. And this hole in the top here, I'll lubricate that too, so it runs over that pin. Let's see, yeah, that, okay, so we'll get this spring in place now. Come on camera, hurry up. Right, I've got to get this spring under this stud on that arm. It can be done. It's just medium tricky, not impossible. Oh, nearly had it then, it just slipped out. That's it. The molybdenum paste on that front edge there. And then this can go down into place. Get it to line up with the post under there. That's it. Our advanced rewind lever goes on there. You can give that a smear of synthetic grease, I think. And this piece goes on. Just going to make sure we get that centered up. That looks good. And I'll tighten that in place. So I'll put the spanner on the top of the film advance, like that. And I had a pair of pliers just sitting here to do that job, didn't I? Did I take them away again? That would be clever. Looks like it. Well, I didn't take them very far. That looks good. Okay, well all that stuff appears to be moving smoothly. So I'll put a little bit of synthetic grease on various contact surfaces. This piece in particular, it's got a little cam on it. And I want that this arm runs against. I just want to make sure that it's got a bit of lubrication on it. Likewise, the gear teeth here between the sprocket shaft and that one. That seems to move nicely. Some molybdenum paste, this little sloping section here. Just put some molybdenum paste on there. This piece comes down and hits it. And I just wanted to make sure that this piece, that it moves smoothly away. That's good. That part's done. Stick the film advance knob on there just for good measure, I think, at this stage, for convenience. I'm rolling the sprocket with my thumb, and as I roll it round, this piece here, you can't see it, this piece down here follows that cam, swings in when it comes to the notch in the cam, and locks in the lock on the film advance. And when you press this down, it swings. Can you not see it? There's a lever in there with an angle on it. Swings that across, which disengages things to allow you to wind on to the next shot. That part's done. And the shutter's done, isn't it? Well, I need to do the rangefinder next, I think, because otherwise we're going no further. Here's our rangefinder. This is exactly the same as the rangefinder on a Retina 2A for all practical purposes. So 2 screws here at the end, they hold the prism in place on the body. They also adjust the prism, which will help you adjust the vertical alignment of your images. I'll take those out. The prism should come out. It's a bit stiff. Here's the return spring for the rangefinder. It does track back to infinity okay. We'll take that out. Get this screw out. That's frequently very tight. Let's see what it's like here. Yeah, it was pretty tight. It's the screw. Plain washer. A wavy washer. And the arm. We'll take that arm off. Now typically I mark this so that I put that bronze bush or brass bush back in the same place it came from. So I'm just going to scratch a line across those 2 surfaces. And that helps me get it back in the same place. There's nothing unusual about that bush as far as I know. It's just a circular bush, but because it's got a slot cut in it, it sort of acts a little bit like an eccentric. By putting it back in exactly the same orientation, it makes it less likely that I'm going to struggle getting my adjustments right. This screw here holds the retainer for the rear glass, the piece closest to your eye. Remove that retainer, and that piece of glass in there is flat or close enough to it to the outside. It's convex to the inside. This piece on the front here, that mask, I happen to know that if I put that through the ultrasonic cleaner, the paint will clean straight off it straight away, no problem at all. I'll have to repaint it, so remove that. This is ready to go into the ultrasonic cleaner now, bar a bit of pre-treatment to get rid of that grease. The difference between this and the rangefinder on a Retina 2A comes down to the springs here and here that hold this semi-silvered mirror in place. Here they're wire springs, and on the 2A they're not. It's just a pushed in leaf spring type arrangement. Well, that looks good. I'll just wipe these surfaces to get as much grease off the base of it as I can, because I'm going to clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I don't want lots of oil suspended in the water and then settling onto the glass surfaces that I'm doing my best to get clean. That should do. So off to the ultrasonic cleaner for this part. And what I'm cleaning in the ultrasonic cleaner is the semi-silvered mirror that you can see. And this face here, that faces the front. That's plain glass. You can clean that with anything you like. The inner surface, that's the one with the silvering on. Leave that alone. I find the ultrasonic cleaner does a wonderful job. You can possibly get away with cleaning that one with cotton bud and some solvent if you're gentle, but it's always a bit of an unknown. Best not. That can be cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner. The arm here that's covered in some dirty thick grease. So I need to clean that, because otherwise it's likely to be sticky. So I've cleaned all the contact surfaces there. And now I've just got to clean the glass on that. And these other pieces need to be, the washers and so forth need to be cleaned to get rid of that old grease too. This part's very sticky. With greasy parts like this, with thick, sticky old grease, you may well find that in warm weather you don't have a problem, everything works fine. But in cold weather, the lubricants are more viscous and they'll stick. And the typical failure mode for a rangefinder like this is that they're fine when you are moving from the infinity position to a close focus position, because the rangefinder arm is being pulled outwards by the mechanism. But when you return your focus scale ring towards the infinity position, it's only, the rangefinder is only being pulled back by its spring. It's not being positively pulled back by the arm. And so if the grease is sticky, the spring cannot overcome that stickiness, and you find that the rangefinder arm doesn't track back to the infinity position. And as a result, you can get the wrong impression about where your focus point should be. Right, this off to the ultrasonic cleaner, and while that's going on, I'll clean these glass surfaces. I've got the body back from the ultrasonic cleaner, that's all clean. I've just popped the eyepiece glass back in the back. You didn't see any of that because the video camera wasn't on and I can't be bothered rerunning it. So I just cleaned that rear glass, that rear lens with some glass cleaner. Normal domestic glass cleaner, nothing fancy. And pop that back in place. I'm just putting the mask on the front here now. And there's something odd about the paint on that. I think the paint's lifting on one spot, or it might be a spot of something on there. Let's just see if that comes away. No, it was just some deposit on the surface, I think. Right. But I was also saying, which you didn't hear a word of because the camera wasn't on, that the other reason I clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner is to get at the lens that's in here, where that screw is on the back. That holds a little barrel in place with a lens in it. Now, you could take that screw out, you could slide that lens right out. You have to take it out past the semi-silvered mirror, so that means you have to remove that completely to get at it, and you could clean the glass surfaces. That's very tedious. The more tedious part of it is that the position of this is quite important. It's on there's a slot there for adjustment, and if it's incorrect, you'll find that as you move your eye slightly in the viewfinder, that the moving image also starts moving, or the fixed image starts moving actually relative to your moving image. In other words, your rangefinder becomes inaccurate because it doesn't work correctly at all places. It's quite important that that adjustment is left alone, not disturbed. So I don't. I clean this whole thing in an ultrasonic cleaner, let that clean the surfaces, and it cleans pretty well. I'm sure I could get it cleaner if I took that out and cleaned those pieces individually, but the cost involved in doing so would far outweigh the benefit. That's just too tricky. So that part's done. The prism I have cleaned, and that can go back in. There are 2 small screws hold the prism in place. And they serve as the adjustment for the vertical alignment. I'm just making sure the prism is fairly square to the front. A little bit of movement here makes a big difference to the images. I haven't cleaned that glass yet. That looks good. So a wipe of molybdenum paste. In here, that's where the bush is going to go, and I usually run some on that face there. That's where it comes up against the body of the rangefinder. Put the bush back in place here now. I've got the scratched alignment mark I made there, so I can line these 2 components up. That's all I need to do. Where's my block of wood? Are we in the image? We're only just in the image. Okay. It can go on there. Now the wavy washer goes on first, so I'll just put a little wipe of molybdenum paste on that top surface. Here's our wavy washer. That goes round that bush. There's the fixed washer, the flat washer rather. Here we go. That goes on there. Here's the screw. Screw that down tight, check that the arm moves freely, and it does. Here's the bar that goes through the spring, so I just get that bar through the end of the spring. It's not playing the game. Why won't that go through there? Well, it's a bit of a neat fit. Normally it's not. Okay, let's get that fed up onto there. Stretch that spring out, hook it into place. Check that the rangefinder returns to the rest position each time. No great problem. Good. Now I'm just going to check the alignment looking out the window. Of course I'm just about looking into the sun there, so I can see bugger all. Back shortly.